Hey everybody, this is John Scarborough. I wanted to do a little video today on hammers. It's a little bit of a cold day outside. As you can see, I got all my Carhartts on, my coveralls, and trying to keep warm. It's a little bit cold out there right now. It's well, for you northerners, it's not all that cold, but don't make fun. It's cold for us, and it's 100% humidity, and so that always makes it a little bit more fun. But whatever the case may be, I really don't want to be outside right now. Just kind of nasty, dreary, no like that. Don't want to be out there. Figured I'd take this time and make a little video talking about hammers, different style hammers, different reasons for different style hammers, and possibly the reason for so many hammers. I got a lot of hammers and may end up with some more one day. I don't know. I sure like hammers. There's a lot of different uses for them. But what I wanted to touch on just a little bit, I had somebody at one time ask me, it was on a video I made a video about fencing, and they said, well, who are you to talk about fencing and tell us how to do fencing? Well, I'm not even going to go into that. But what I will do is try to give you a little bit of a brief understanding of who I am for talking about hammers. Because obviously, I kind of get it. I mean, you don't want to be wasting your time or listening to somebody that you don't really know if they know what they're talking about or if their opinion is worth a flip. First off, I'll say that my opinion is just my opinion. It's in my, everything that I'll tell you is in my experience, things that work for me and don't work for me. Take it or leave it. I do find it helpful sometimes if I listen to somebody else's point of view. Sometimes it's useful, sometimes it's not, helping me to decide what I need and what I don't need. So what I wanted to talk about a little bit, well, so I'll tell you. Who I am is I've been in the welding profession. I've been in, I still do that here in this shop. I don't do it as much as I used to, but I did quite a bit of work, and I used hammers in that profession. And then, of course, I use hammers in the building profession some, and different things like that. And just for layout, for like if you're building a metal building or something, I'll use it for layout, for all your concrete stakes and just things like that. I've been exposed a little to that kind of stuff. Done hammers, of course. You need hammers in fencing. I mean, I've used it for those style things too. And then I've played with a little bit with blacksmith stuff and everything. I'm not, by no means am I a blacksmith, and I wouldn't even dare to say that I am. But I've played with it, and so I do have certain hammers that I find work better for me personally in that scenario. And I'm hoping to kind of get a little bit better with that. I'm still playing with it. And I've also done leather work. I've been doing leather work since I was 12 years old. Haven't done a lot of it here recently since we built in this new home here, just simply because I don't have a place for it. It's all in storage right now. But I've done work with that, and you do, when you're tooling and stuff like that, you do use hammers. You don't use hammers with a lot of force unless you're punching big holes and stuff, and then you do. But it's a little bit of a different technique. But the point is I have kind of gone full circle with different things with hammers. Anyway, for what that's worth, that's who I am. Take it or leave it. So let's kind of get into it. Let's not talk about it too long. I wanted to talk a little bit about wood versus metal on handles. We'll start off with that. Two different hammers, close to the same size. I'm not sure if they're exactly the same, but they're pretty close to the same hammer, close to the same length of hammer. This is a shorter handle than a lot of people like. A lot of people would probably even hate on me for this length of handle. And that's something else we'll get into, is length of handles and reasonings behind it and all like that. But wood versus metal. Okay, if you look over here on the table, 90% of the hammers that I have are wooden handled hammers. So we'll get into the quick and obvious answer of wood versus metal, and that's if you're a professional that uses a hammer all day long. Let's use this one right here. Like I said, and I'll say in all of my videos, I'm not brand specific. Certainly don't have anybody paying me any money to say that a certain hammer's a certain way. But I own certain tools because I like them. Doesn't mean that I don't necessarily like other brands. So this hammer right here, I find to be a very good hammer. It's about 19 ounces is what it is. And it's a really good carpenter's hammer. And anytime I do carpenter's work, I like it. I really like this hammer, but it's a metal handle. I will say it's probably one of the most comfortable metal handles that I've used if I'm using it for an extended period of time. But the reason for not using metal and for using wood for the most part is even if you got a really good one, eventually using that hammer all day long, that handle starts to get, the vibration of that will start to get to your arm. You got muscles in here that will really start to get sore, but it will start to get into your tendons, and you'll get tendonitis. Sometimes you'll feel it all the way up in here because that tendon that starts here goes all the way up back into there. So some people feel it in different places. Me personally, I would feel it in both places. And I say that because I actually have a tendon issue that I was born with that causes me to have those issues sometimes regardless. So I kind of know how that is. I also, if anybody knows me, I do enjoy working out. And sometimes you lift a little more than you should. And as a result, I don't always, I feel some of that tendonitis sometimes. So that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest answer between wood versus metal. It's pretty simple, really, is if you do it all day long, every day, metal is not for you. It's going, no matter what you're talking about, because it's going to start wearing you down and it's going to start hurting you. A lot of people in the carpentry profession do not use a hammer all day. Now, there's not a lot of reasons to. We've got impact drivers, battery packed impact drivers. A lot of people use screws for fasteners now, and then when they do use nails, then they use nail guns and things like that. And the hammer's used some. So for that case, for me, I don't use it a lot. You just don't need a wooden handle necessarily all day. So I chose to go metal on this case, just simply so it lasts forever. And I won't have to worry about it. It's a great hammer. It's there when I need it. And it's not even my profession. I do a little bit of it. I've done a little bit in certain places. I've done it for myself and things like that. So there was no need for me to go super high dollar. This is a decently priced hammer for what it is. So there was no need to just go overly priced on that. So that's wood versus metal. On that take, you use wood primarily to save your tendonitis, to save your arms if you're doing it all the time, because it takes the wood takes the vibration out and it absorbs a lot of that pressure. So beyond that, there are reasons for metal, and that's partly lastability. You put a metal handle on that thing, it's going to last you. It's going to last you pretty much forever. And I mean, if you're welding with it, if you weld it on there, then it will last you forever if you know how to weld decent. That one right there has got a welded on hammer. You can't even tell the weld's there, and this thing right here will last forever. I mean, I would really have to bang that thing up to mess it up. I will say that with a metal handle, I personally don't prefer them on most hammers. Like I said, on this one, I like it. I like it on this one. I don't prefer them on most handles. My brother, he's actually a welder, and he's been in the profession for longer than I have. And he really likes the metal handles on his Sledge, on his smaller hammers. He's got one about that size, maybe a little smaller, and he really likes it. But it's a different type of. It's not just any old metal handle. It's a special tubing that is a thinner metal. So first off, it's not too heavy, and that's the key. Is you don't want one that's so heavy that it makes the hand. You don't want the handle to be as heavy as the head. There's no good balance there. Okay, so that's part of it. If you do that, look for a nice, a thinner tubing. You're going to need to know how to weld good. If you can't put a good weld on there, don't do it. And secondly, when I say weld good, I mean it needs to be a flexible weld. It needs to be a 70-18 weld specifically. And I say that from a welder's perspective. I've done that long enough. I really think that I can tell you who I am on that and just tell you, if you're not going to do it with a good 70-18 clean weld, don't do it. Just don't. It's not safe. It's dangerous. Go put your good wooden handle on there and be done with it. But with that being said, he personally, my brother, and he's a welder and I'm a welder, we're both welders, he personally prefers the metal handles. Why? I'm not sure necessarily. I don't dislike them, but I personally don't prefer them. And I think part of it's a nostalgia thing. I think when I'm accustomed to picking up a hammer, and I feel that wood in my hand, and I don't know, it just has that was the first, I'll show you right here. This was the first hammer I ever used once I started really making money. Well, when I was a teenager, I actually made money fencing. I actually did fencing quite a bit, and I used another hammer, but it wasn't anything worth mentioning. I just used what I had. But the first hammer that I liked was this one right here. This is a little bit of a shorter handle, and it was I think it was a Millwright's hammer. It was given to me. But it is a very nice hammer. It's about a pound and a half I don't think it's 2 pounds, but it may be 2 pounds. So it's pound and a half, 2 pound ball peen hammer, very handy hammer. But it was one of the first ones that I really started using in my profession. I use it for center punches when I'm laying out steel and things like that. And it's just a really good feel and everything. So I think that's most of it. It's nostalgia on my end when it comes to the wood. It's a nostalgia thing, and I actually think it probably leans towards that with him as well. I don't know, you'd have to ask him, just simply because I think one of the first things he did as a welder was weld a handle onto a hammer that worked for him, and it worked really good. It's a nice hammer. It looks about like this. They're pretty much the same two hammers. So I really think that's part of it when it comes to that stuff. It's nostalgia. So then why do I have, if I prefer that, why do I have a metal handle, and do I think that they have their place? The answer is yes. I obviously own one. I think that they do have their place. I find this useful in a couple different places. For one, I can give it to somebody that's working for me, and I don't have to worry about them breaking it or messing it up if I fear that they're not great with a hammer or something, and they might hit the handle. I've seen guys come over here and swing, and they miss, and they hit the handle, and they break it, and I just don't like that. So for that aspect, if you think that you're not very good, or you're using it for somebody else that's not very good, maybe go ahead and give them that metal handle. But then there's other reasons too. I actually find this really handy when I'm fabbing cold roll, sucker rod, and things like that, because I can beat around on it, but then also I've got a hole here and I've got a hole there, and that one's a round hole, and this one is actually more of a oblong hole, but I can use this one more for sticking onto flatter pieces, and it doesn't twist on me, and I can get a good bend on it, and then I can also use this round piece. I can stick it down in there, and I've got leverage. So that's what I use this for primarily, is things like that. I can beat around on some stuff, and move it around, get it where I need to. It's always a good backup hammer. There's that too. If I did have one, a handle broke. I don't have that happen to me very often, but every now and then you get one. I had a hammer that I really liked, and I'll talk about it in a minute, a Sledge that I really liked, but I had found it for really dirt cheap, but the handle was not really put on very well. It was put on by somebody else. Well, I used it until it did break off, and eventually it did break and came off of there. Well, this was not a Sledge, but it was a little heavier than the other hammer I had, and so it made a nice little backup. And so that's kind of something on that. So metal hammers, they have their place. That little hole in the back can be very handy for certain things that you do. Outside of that, I'm not big on it, except for the fact that if it's something that like this, that I'd use some, but I don't use enough, but I feel like I want it to always be there and don't ever want to have to worry about it. I don't want it to be low maintenance, okay? And so I do less carpentry than I do metal work, so that's one reason for that. So then let's talk about the next one, and I think that's lengths of your handles, okay? And I think this is a pretty important topic, because you can see here this hammer that I like. This is a nice size for me. For a lot of my hammers, actually, is this shorter size, and a lot of people say they'll hate on me for that. They say don't do that, and there's actually a big discrepancy. A lot of different people say, oh, never choke a hammer. You always come all the way out here, and you should have a really, really long handle. There's just different opinions on that, and some people really put out a lot of scientific stuff on that. Personally, I've never, I've been using hammers, like I said, for many years. Okay, I'm not going to say many years. I'm not old. But I've been using hammers for almost 20 years. Well, no, right at 20 years now. And I think that's long enough to justify saying I can use a hammer well enough to tell myself how I prefer to use a hammer. And I've never had an injury from using a hammer. There's a lot of guys that do it a lot, and they'll get an injury right here because they're holding the hammer wrong. And some people say that it's because of how they're holding it, or they're holding too heavy of a hammer. But as you can see, I'm going to make this point here in this demonstration. As you can see, this length right here is a pretty good length for me, but yet my carpenter's hammer, look at that. I chose a full length. Now I could have done something. I'm a welder. I could have done something. I could have made me a shorter hammer, but there's a reason for the longer handle, okay? A good reason. When you swing a hammer, okay, you create power. You can create, because I could have gone with a heavier hammer than that. But you can actually create power from how far you are back. So I could choke this close, and I'm not going to have as much power as I am when I go all the way out, right there. Now, obviously, if I'm right here, I got no power. There's nothing there. But, you know, even right there, there's not as much power. If I come all the way out to there, I can get a lot more power. And if I had a big old, I'll just use this one. If I had this massive sledge right here, that's a 12-pound sledge, and I try to hold that the same, let's see if I can get that in frame. Okay, there's your sledge, and I'm going to hold that right there, about the same spot that I would be on this hammer, somewhere close. And I can hold it, and I might even could swing it for just a little bit, but I tell you, I sure wouldn't want to for very long. That's going to start tearing up your arm, and people do have those issues. So the point is, and this is probably not a completely fair comparison, but the point is that I can use a lighter hammer that I can be able to carry on my person if I'm doing carpentry work and I'm wearing my tool bags, where they kind of look like saddlebags that go on both sides of you, and I'm wearing that, and this is strapped behind me. So part of the advantage is this is on my person, and it's not terribly heavy, but yet when I'm using it, I've got more power because it's longer. Plus, I've got some pry power. I don't use this right here very often, but I do sometimes. We do a lot of repurposing, me and my wife. We have once we've gotten over here, so that comes in handy in places. I have not used it very much, but I do sometimes. But whatever the case may be, that long handle comes in handy in places. Some people, they prefer for every hammer they have to be a longer handle. And that's perfectly fine. I don't think that you should get in people's faces like some people do and really try to ridicule them and say, nope, you're a terrible person for having a hammer handle that length. You know, it should not be shorter. You're just a terrible person. Well, first off, this hammer right here and this one, both of these, actually come at that length. That's the length that they come at. They actually, when you buy them, they're actually that way. So whatever the case may be, you get the point on that. So that, the length of the hammer somewhat should be decided by you. And also, let's talk about this for a second. I'm going to use this hammer right here. No, better yet, I'm going to use this one. This is a 4-pound sledge with a shorter handle, okay? I use this right here like that most of the time. Is it okay to choke that up just a little bit on occasion? Is that okay? Or let's just say all the time, whatever. Is that okay? Okay, well, first off, it's your own body and it's your own hammer. You can do whatever you want. Don't really matter what anybody says. But let's talk about why this can be useful to choke this up a little bit. There are places why it can be useful. Well, first off, a lot of my hammers, we'll try to get one here. Let's use this one. A lot of my hammers, I'll actually use 2 different hammers when I'm straightening steel, when I'm putting in nails in the back of a board or whatever, and I'll actually use this hammer just for weight, almost like an anvil. and I'll come behind there. There'll be a sheet of steel right here, and I'll be beating, and I'm not going to strike that too hard on the face of that, but I'll be coming through and I'll be beating and using this just simply as weight. And when I'm doing that, it really doesn't matter where I'm holding this. I hold it where it's the most comfortable, the best place. I've even had it all the way short choked just like that in certain scenarios in certain places. But then there are other things as well, as you do, even though you don't get the power, you do not have the power when you're choked up like this. What you do have is control. And there are places, and I can say this as especially coming from my leather background, sometimes a shorter handle really comes in handy for control, okay? And you know, there's several different places why choking one up for control is useful, and that's primarily why I would choke a hammer. Other than that, I'm going to use the full length of the hammer handle because I'm getting all of my power, okay? So for me personally, if I will choke them if I think I need control. For the most part, that's about the only reason I'm going to choke them. Other than that, I'm going to try to get the advantage of my handle. But it is useful, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. This hammer right here is one of my first hammers. Not one of my first hammers. It was probably the second or third hammer I got. Me and my brother actually went to the store and we bought a cheap hammer, 3-pound hammer. It was a little bit heavier than this one, and it came in handy for putting in wedges and stuff like that when we were working on pipeline or when we were doing some fab work. I found it to be about the perfect size, and honestly, when I bought it, I didn't think I'd like it. I sure still to this day don't really like the shape. To me, it's just a little plain, personal preference. I kind of like that look just a little bit better. That's a 4-pound, that's a 3-pound, but I like the look a little bit better. Just personal preference. It does not matter. I just like it a little bit better. But this hammer right here, I actually ended up loving this hammer. I loved everything about it. The length, okay? And yes, it is one of my shorter ones. So I loved the length for the job that I did with it. I loved the 3-pound. I loved everything about it. As soon as I got to this 4-pound right here, as soon as I tried to use that one, same length hammer, as soon as I tried to do it for that job, for using those wedges, it wasn't perfect. It just wasn't perfect, okay? This, for that application, was perfect, okay? And we'll talk about the screw here in just a minute, okay? But this hammer is a very handy hammer right here. It's not terribly heavy. It's about 4 pounds, like I said. Not terribly heavy, but it's got its place because there's several places where you need to really drive a wedge or something like that. You need to really drive something in, move something out of the way, but you don't want the heaviest hammer around. Part of the reason for a shorter handle on a maul or on a sledge or whatever, some people call these things different things when they've got shorter handles like that. There are reasons for all of these things. Is the fact that when you want to drop it in a bag or something, if you try to drop that in your bag, that's just going to be all awkward and slapping you in the face and the back and everything else. You slap that in somewhere and it ain't going to come out. You know, it's just, that's part of it, is you put it in there, got it when you need it. This is one application. If you wanted to use it, like I said, again, as a backer, and then put on some wood, put on a board when you're doing some concrete form, something like that. So that's kind of what I use that for. I will go into this screw briefly. I put it on this one as well. That screw, I find, if you have a hammer handle that starts to, see if I can get that in frame. You can tell there's a line right there. It actually split. That split right there. Well, that split would have continued to go up, maybe even hurt me, and then it would have ended up causing this to mess up. That happened a long time ago. I was able to take that screw, I drilled a pilot hole down deep inside, all the way in there. Then I actually cut the tip off of the screw and screwed that screw down inside there, and it goes to about right in there somewhere. And that has saved that hammer handle. I'm not saying that it's something you want to use everywhere, but that's been on there for, When I first bought the hammer, right after I bought it, that happened. I don't know why it happened. It's probably something in the grain structure of the hammer, whatever. Could be one of my helpers hit it wrong. Could have hit it right there and caused it to fracture. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know. Maybe I did it. Maybe I hit it and, whatever. I can't honestly remember why. I think it's been probably 10 years since that happened. Put that screw in there, no problem. Been using it ever since, not any issue. Same thing on here. It had a fracture going back in like that. It goes all the way up. Haven't had a whole lot of issue out of that. That one I actually found this one sitting in a ditch on the side of the road. Pretty nice. But anyway, found that and it got hit. It looked like it had been fractured. Put that screw in there. Haven't had any issue out of it so far. This handle on here is actually a little shorter than I would like on a full-length sledge. There are reasons for this. People talk about the reasons for it. So far, I have not found a big reason for it. I think the biggest thing I could find is if I was on the side, something like this right here. If I was on the side of a drilling rig or something, I've done that before and I didn't have this hammer. I think at that point, I would probably appreciate that short hammer handle because you could, it would just be preferable in that instance. And that may have been what this was for. May have been a drilling rig's hammer or something like that, fell off a truck. So in that scenario, I think it would be handy. For me, for the most part, for what I use a sledge for, I would prefer a little bit of a longer handle on this 12-pound or anything bigger than that. Because for me, most of the time, if I've got something, I'm drawing back and coming straight down, and I kind of like a longer handle to extend outward. But this one gets me by and it's not too bad. When I put one on there, that's probably what I'll do. So let's talk about this guy right here. Okay, this is right in between. If I put that there, and that there, those are what I'm classifying as my sledges. Those are what I'm using as my sledges. This technically a sledge, but I don't really use it as a sledge. So kind of whatever. That's what I have a tool. I have a place for it. But this, if I'm reaching for a sledge, one of these two is what I'm reaching for. One of these three. And this right here is my most used sledge. This one right here sits in my box. It's there when I need it. It's something kind of handy for using around. This one right here is when I really need to go after some work. Okay. But this one is the most used sledge that I have. And that has, I'm not exactly sure of that length of that hammer. Wait just 1 minute and I will get a tape measure and we will see. All right. So let's see here. From the head all the way back to the handle is close to 15 inches and it's close to 17 inches overall from there. So from there to there is close to 15. From there all the way back is close to 17. And for me, I really like that length. It works out pretty good. Like I said, when I got the hammer, the handle was just a little bit shorter, probably about 2 inches shorter, and that was a little too short. It worked, but for me it was a little bit too short, so I just kind of eyeballed it, and that's about what I came up with, and I like that. That's a pretty good length. This is a 6-pound, I don't know if you can see that. It's a 6-pound hammer. Really good, middle-of-the-road hammer. So what do I use this guy for? A little bit of everything. In fact, it's, like I said, I think it's my favorite sledge. All of them are useful, and they kind of ride around in different places. But this one I use pretty much any job I go to. I don't want to be without this hammer. And in fact, I think it's a little funny because I broke this, and then I went without this hammer. I thought I'd be okay without it. I just didn't take the time to put a new handle on there. And this one's fairly new. So I didn't take the time to put a new handle on there. And so I was using this one right here, and then I find myself using this one right here. kind of back and forth, and they were okay, but I always missed this one. So let's get into this one real quick. I don't want to take up your whole day. I've already taken nearly 30 minutes of the video. Hope y'all don't mind trying to put some detailed videos out there. Some people like it, some people don't. The reason this is one of my favorite hammers is if it was any heavier, okay, I couldn't hold it like this for very long, okay? Well, why do I want to hold a bigger hammer with one hand? Well, there's a lot of reasons, and we'll go back to that using it as a backup hammer. In a lot of places, if I'm bending down and I'm really wanting to get some length on it, then it's a comparable length to this hammer, so I can bend down and I can reach and I can get them together and I can use them. They work good as a pair if I'm using this for concrete forms or for lots of different things, straightening out metal. And then also, it works as a really good pair with this guy. I'm using it for straightening, and I'm really getting after it on some really big metal. I can use my 12-pounder, I just don't really want to. It's big enough, I don't really want to get after that. So this one, that 4-pound, when you're doing that, you're straightening metal, you're using this as a backing hammer, no matter what you're doing, you always want this one, the back hammer, you want it to be heavier than this, because you're essentially turning this into an anvil. It absorbs the blow, okay? That way you're not just blowing all over the place, but also it really helps to straighten some metal. And if anybody wants to see a video on straightening metal, how to straighten a metal with 2 hammers like that, just let me know and I'll throw you a good video out there. It's really come in handy for me. I've used it in a lot of different places. But you can use that for that right there, and that really, really works really good. So that's one scenario that you would need to use one hand for. And I wouldn't want to get much bigger than that. Another scenario is driving stakes for concrete work. Doing concrete stakes or just for layout work, period. If I'm building a pole barn or a metal building or whatever I'm doing, shoot, I've put stakes out when I'm getting ready to do a garden, you know. So whatever I'm doing, I'm driving these stakes in. A lot of times it's for layout for a building or something like that. We're working on a lean-to right now, and when we did all that, we used stakes to drive to run our string lines and all like that. And this was my friend right here. I really like this guy because I can hold the stake with one hand, and then I can take this guy, I can choke it if I need to because it's heavy, or I can bring it back. And I can actually use it like that, I just don't like to, and it doesn't feel good. So I find myself choking it to about right there, and it works. I can do that. I can do that quite a bit. I can hold up and actually use that hammer. So you ask yourself, well, why, if you're gonna choke it, why have a longer handle, or why not have a lighter hammer like this one with that long hammer? Well, I hate to tell you this, guys, but even though that longer hammer handle does create more blow, guess what? That 6 pounds choked up to here creates more power for less work than this one does when you're driving stakes. If you don't believe me, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how to prove it to you. I'm not even going to take the time to prove it to you. For me personally, and for a lot of guys that I know that actually are not sitting on their couch right now, they know what I'm talking about. So there are places where choking your handle does come in handy. So the second reason for choking this is obviously for the control, but now as soon as I turn loose from that stake, I can grab it and then use it as a sledge, and now I've got two hands on it. 2 hands creates the power from the length of the hammer, okay, right there, using the same hammer. I'm not bringing 2 hammers around, but then the control from right here. And you can come down and then swing and then pull your hands together and you create that blow. And that's how you can really get some serious power and control out of a hammer. So that turns a hammer like this, because I could use this bigger hammer right here. I could use that and do the same thing. But that's basically giving me a hammer that I can use with one hand, That's as heavy as it can get, but I can still manage to hold it while at the same time giving me the power from a two-handed sledge. Why is it shorter like that? Why not just go ahead and have it longer? Because most of what I'm doing is starting that stake. And when I'm starting that stake, I don't want that big old long handle getting in the way. Secondly, if I'm setting forms or something, I will wear my bags a lot of times. I'll go ahead and wear those. I won't weld it. I won't wear them as a welder in a welding profession because they just don't work as a welding profession. Sometimes I wish they did. They just don't. But whatever the case may be, when I'm out using that, if I'm setting forms or whatever, then I can drop these in my bags just as well, and that handle doesn't get in my way. It still works, okay? So there's reasons for all of this stuff. I've seen so many videos, so many debates, people talking about, oh, your handle should always be long, period, you know? And they're so strong and adamant about it. I'm like, there are so many reasons for hammers, okay? I'll show you this right here. These are two different little bitty hammers right here. This right here would make those guys that make those videos, they'd probably pee their pants. I mean, they'd probably hate it, okay? But there is a use for both of these hammers. And I've used their use. I use both of these in leather work, okay? This is one I actually made myself. It's nothing special. It's a black walnut handle. But then this right here, I believe it's a mahogany. I don't remember. I have a brother that is actually really good in woodwork, and he helped me select the wood and everything for it. Whatever the case may be, it's a really dense wood that works good for hammering, but at the same time, it's wood so that I can use it on my tools. So when I'm tooling the leather, it's softer than the steel tool, okay? But it's dense so it doesn't tear up the head as bad as like pine, and it's actually a nice dense grain, so it actually works better than oak or anything like that. But at the same time, it's light. And this hammer, I'm going to be using choked up. I'm going to be using it short. And actually quite a bit different than I would a lot of other handles. So it's not long at all. I mean, there's my hand. I usually hold my hand right there, okay? But it's not long. And I like that length because I need the control. If you know anything about leather work or tooling leather, it takes fine motor skills. You know, you really have to get in there and get fine with it. Okay, and then this hammer is just a slightly heavier, a little bit heavier than that, but a harder end. And I use it when I still need the control, but I need just a little bit more blow. Okay, I don't want to use it all the time because it's metal and it would tear up my tools. But there are some places where I need just a little bit more blow, and I'll use that. So that kind of, to me, that's where I'm getting my control background, where I'm understanding that there's a place for control when using a hammer. And in metalwork, and a lot of different metalwork that I've done, I have found that control with a little bit of a shorter handle sometimes is worth it. And if I have a longer handle, if I have a big old long handle, that handle feels awkward on the back. So it just doesn't work for me. I would rather have two hammers, one for control and one for the other. But honestly, I just use what works well for me and what I've been using for 20 years. And using in leather work and fencing and everything else. So, got a call coming in. We'll hang that up real quick. And I'll end this video in just a second. So anyway, I wanted to cover that just a little bit, talk a little bit about the hammers, my side of it, what I find works really well for me. And I hope that really helps out. If anybody wants any more details on anything like that or think that I've missed anything, feel free, throw it in there. Throw me, let everybody know your side of it. But there's no reason to be mean about it. There's no reason to get all up in my face and tell me how wrong I am or why I'm wrong. If you want to tell me why I'm wrong, that's fine, or what your opinion is. Because in reality, it's just your opinion. You tell me your opinion, I'm not going to stop using that hammer. I love that hammer. It works great for me, and I've made a lot of money with it, So you tell me your opinion, I'm going to appreciate your opinion, and I might even use it in certain scenarios. And somebody else may find that your opinion works better for them. So throw it out there, put it in the comments. But there's no reason to be, there's no reason to be so strong-headed, bull-headed about something that says, no matter what, my opinion is right. I'm sorry to say that usually none of our opinions are perfect. So that's just the way it is. Anyway, I hope that helps somebody. I hope somebody can get some good out of that about the hammers. This has turned into nearly a 40-minute video. Probably will be 40 minutes when I'm all the way done. So hope you guys will like, subscribe, put your comments in there. Comment, let me know if there's any other videos, any other topics you'd like me to cover. We cover a lot of different stuff, kind of a broad area in this channel. Mostly it's about how we make an income, how we make money. But then I like to touch on things that we are exposed to in that, we do gardening, microgreens, we raise cows, we raise sheep, we raise pigs, we raise different types of animals in those scenarios. I've personally raised a lot more than that in that. And then I have a shop, a fab shop. I do fab work out of that shop. I've done professionally. I've done professional welding and pipelining, and I've done professional B31.3 severe weld for vessels and tanks and fabrication in those areas. And so we've done all sorts of different things. So we just like to kind of share what we've learned and what works for us. So anyway, guys, I hope y'all appreciate that and continue to watch my videos, hopefully. So thanks.